you grow as a human, you build. And I think that is so much about what being human is, finding uncomfortable positions and uncomfortable situations and environments to make you more resilient, build your strength in mind and in body. And I'm hugely passionate about that. I think we live in a world that's very, very comfortable in so many ways. When you're cold, you put the heating on. When you're too hot, you put the AC on. Build some strength, build some resilience, get some grit. It's just too easy. That's why I love conscious stress to promote adaptation, from ice baths to running in the bloody pitch black in the rain to, I thrive in that.
Hello, beautiful people. On today's podcast, we have the lovely Rory Warnock. Rory is a performance and wellness coach specializing in breathwork to improve mental and physical health, and is an ultra-marathon runner. What I personally love about this conversation is Rory's absolute zest for life. He is so deeply passionate about breathwork, and is in this conversation we discuss the best strategies we can begin implementing in our own lives to reduce stress, anxiety, and depression, and how we can improve focus, sleep, and performance. We also explore Rory's first ultramarathon experience of the UTA 100, where he shares vulnerably his intention of character building through resilience, and why it is so important in this day and age of comfort that we overcome set challenges to further develop our sense of purpose and meaning. Please enjoy this wonderful conversation with Rory Warnock. Welcome, Rory.
Thank you for having me.
So Rory, where I'd love to start is with a little excerpt from your website. After graduating, I entered the corporate world where I worked as a sales manager for 3 years. I soon realized that I was following what I felt I should be doing rather than what I genuinely wanted to do. So where I would love to start, Rory, is for you to share more about that time in your life where you did come to the realization that you were following what you thought you should do versus following what you genuinely wanted to do.
Yeah, nice start. So I think underlying the words should and want, I feel there's a lot of pressure from the outside world, from society, family, friends, to be a certain person and do a certain thing. And, when I left university, got a good degree in strength and conditioning science, but I saw all my friends were going into the corporate world and, banking, property, finance of some sort, whatever it may be. So I thought, well, I'll just do the same. I'll just climb that corporate ladder, make my way up, and then I'll be a happy boy and I'll make a load of cash. And that's what life's about, right?
Right. That's what they tell you.
That's what they tell you, right? That's what movies say. That's the way society is built, generally speaking. But, I felt so unhappy and so unfulfilled, and I couldn't work out who I was or what my purpose was. Some days, some weeks I enjoyed it, but others I was so low, so down, to the extent where I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety from a pretty young age, early 20s. I didn't really know what anxiety and depression was. It wasn't really spoken about at school much. It wasn't really spoken at home, and I don't blame my parents at all for that. It just wasn't something in our life. I thought I had everything I wanted, from a great girlfriend, great family. I had a stable job with money coming in, but yet inside I felt like I had nothing. So that's, I guess that's to answer the question about a roundabout way, where, I thought I was doing what I should have been doing, but then I realized that it wasn't what I actually wanted to be doing.
Yeah, I can relate to that entirely. I studied law and politics and went into corporate, which is so far from what I'm doing now. And I woke up and I would feel like immediate anxiety. I would feel this low-level depression. It would be hard to get out of bed some days. Some days I'd purely just call in sick just because I just felt so down. And I get it. I've been there, and I think a lot of people have been there. And it's really hard in those moments to truly understand how to get out of it. I know for me, even I was like questioning myself, because as you speak about, from the outside, it looks like you have everything. And, I would question, am I an ungrateful person, right? So it's interesting where your mind goes with that. And I'd love to know, Rory, when like during this time in your life, like what actually fed the realization? Because I think a lot of us can live like this for years. It's not something that kind of happens and we take action immediately. What was it for you that really fueled that change of direction in your life?
Yeah, I'm massively passionate about finding growth in crisis or growth in discomfort. And for me, the crisis came in the form of depression. I was given antidepressants, but I wanted to find a different way to improve my life and improve the way that I thought, felt, and behaved in the world. So I went down the rabbit holes of understanding peak performance, personal development. This is probably back in 2014, 2015 time, roughly. And I was going down the Tony Robbins route, Ed Milet, all these sort of, legends in the game, for no better term. And, it really helped me. Then I found breathwork that really helped me get out of a specific hole or that particular place in my life. So I started going down all these rabbit holes and trying to find a bit more purpose and meaning, because I felt like being in the corporate world and working a dead-end job to make someone else money and not bring myself happiness wasn't really what this life was about. So it's all about, for me, it was finding or understanding the crisis that I was in and how I can get out of that to find health and happiness.
I love that you've mentioned antidepressants too, because, I feel like if antidepressants were the only answer, we wouldn't have an increasing level of depression, particularly people that are on antidepressants. And I think they can serve their purpose in crisis situations. But my own personal experience and study has kind of shown that, it's not a good long-term choice. And I really, respect you for kind of seeking that there may be other ways. And that sense of purpose and meaning I've found in my own life and in people I've worked with lives is a big kind of healer in itself. Towards sort of getting out of that anxiety and that depression. So I know that in London, you were living in London for a while, and this is when you first came across breathwork. Can you share more about sort of coming into that introduction of breathwork and how it began to start changing your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to a Lululemon event in, I think it's Tobacco Docks in London, and it was this event where you buy a ticket and you can try out all these different gyms and spaces and studios within London, like a little trade show sort of thing. And there was a breathwork session going on. I'd never heard of it, but my girlfriend actually said, why don't we go try this out? It'd be good for your health. And I said, breathwork, I try enough of this woo-woo stuff. Do I need more? What's this all about? I really enjoy my yoga, my movement. So, I was doing a lot of yoga at the time as well and enjoyed the breath that came with that. I tried to meditate, but then, telling someone with anxiety to sit with their thoughts for 20 minutes is probably one of the worst things that you can do. So, I feel like I'm quite an open-minded human. And I went along to the breathwork session with my girlfriend, and we sat up at the end of the 45-minute session on the mat and just looked at each other. And I remember I just went, what the hell just happened? It was the most profound experience I've ever had, without taking any other substances, but it was incredible. And it made me feel clear, calm, focused, empowered, strong, all these incredible words that often science can't really explain. So I got addicted and I got hooked, and I went down the rabbit holes of understanding the breath and understanding how, even though it's a subconscious automatic action that we do 25,000 times a day, there's certain ways that we can breathe to improve mental health. And I wanted to improve my mental health at the time. And then because of my strength and conditioning background, I then went down the rabbit holes of understanding how we can breathe in particular ways to improve your physical performance, athletic performance. So my running. And I remember just being like, what is going on here? Like, the world is missing a trick here. I think we're so quick to look at technology and look at supplements and look at outside in tools first before looking at what we have, every second of every day. And, I'm very interested, even though my dissertation at university got published in journal as well. And I was very interested in understanding how we can improve mind and body. Then when I realized that we can do that with the breath, I thought, this is a real deal. And thankfully, I'm very thankful and grateful that over the last 4 or 5 years, it's like a bit of a snowball effect. It's just started taking off. And you've got people at Stanford, Harvard, all these neuroscientists who are showing the incredible benefits, evidence-based practices with the breath. And it's, like a lot of things, it's kind of timing, and I've come in at a good time, it feels, and it seems.
And how do you practice? Because I know not only do you practice personally, but you're a performance and wellness coach. So you bring that into your clients' lives, which kind of range from, athletes to CEOs, groups, individuals, you're kind of across the board. How would you recommend to the listener wanting to start sort of bringing breath work into their life in terms of particularly, on the topic of mental health? What are some sort of, basic strategies that we can start bringing into our daily life?
Yeah, so a great start would be just becoming aware. This is where I'll usually start all my patients, all my clients, just closing the eyes, becoming aware of how they're breathing, whether it's through the nose or through the mouth, whether it's high, whether it's low, fast or slow. There's many different ways to breathe. It's not just air in and air out. And the way that you breathe has a direct correlation to your emotions and how you think, how you feel, how you behave, and ultimately perform in your life. So to give you a quick example, if I were sitting here and breathing short, shallow, fast out of my mouth, that's going to stimulate the nervous system, move you into that sympathetic state, that fight or flight, that high arousal, high stress. But then if you do the opposite, as you're doing now, mouth is closed, using the nose, breathing long, slow, deep, calming breaths, you'll down-regulate the nervous system. So, the autonomic nervous system, the so-called autonomic nervous system, I don't know who named it that, but they're probably quite embarrassed now, where, things like digestion, heartbeat, or heart rate, blood pressure, these are all automatic in the body, but we now know that we can consciously tap into that autonomic nervous system, that fight or flight, that parasympathetic, that rest and digest with the breath. So for example, people who are feeling stressed or anxious, to improve the way that they feel, becoming aware of how they're breathing, to then have the ability to change. Once they have awareness on the breath and how they're breathing, then just breathing slower, even a 4-second inhale with a 6-second exhale. The 6-second exhale, because you're lengthening the exhale, will move that autonomic continuum from that stressful state to the more calming state, which is the fastest way to directly tap into the nervous system, which I find incredible. I hate the word biohack, but it's a bit of a biohack, right? If you can shift your state with a click of the finger, which you can do with the breath, even if you look at I'm looking at my Garmin here. If you're looking at the heart rate, by slowing the breath down on the exhale, you'll notice the heart rate reduce beat by beat, which is incredible. So 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out to relax the nervous system and become aware of the breath before you start anything.
Beautiful. And personally, I've certainly been incorporating breath work more into my life and my clients' lives. And, I'm finding at the moment, even if I'm just sort of waiting in line for something, instead of kind of looking at my phone, I'm now sort of changing that habit to just sort of taking those deeper, longer exhale type breaths. And to be able to do that sort of intermittent throughout the day it's quite amazing the impact that something like that can have that really doesn't take too much effort. But I'd love to know, Rory, because I think, what I have noticed with this kind of breath work as well is there are some people that are actually kind of afraid to move into this, because a lot of us are so used to being in that sympathetic state where we're driven by that fight or flight energy that when we begin to calm down, sort of like when you suggested before with meditation and you've got those racing thoughts, it's really hard to sit and meditate and be with those thoughts. What do you recommend for people that kind of do have a little bit of that fear of discomfort, of kind of slowing down and actually just being with themselves?
Yeah, I often like to think work hard, play hard, rest hard. If you want to work hard and play hard, you have to have the ability to rest so that you can perform to the best of your ability the next day. It's not always about how you perform, it's about how well you can rest. So for me and the clients and patients I work with, sleep is a huge thing. And even if people are scared or a bit resistant to be with their own thoughts for 5-10 minutes, when you bring the attention to the breath, you're just counting. So that's where your attention is. Your attention's on the numbers. You're not thinking about the past. You're not thinking about the future. You're just in that present moment. And, people, I think mindfulness, it's not where it used to be, but mindfulness often gets a bad rep. And people think, oh, mindfulness is just for these yogis who sit cross-legged and meditate. But, mindfulness is the opposite of mindlessness. People be mindless of their actions and more mindful of what they're doing. So I think it's, just having that attention on the breath, almost moving into that discomfort, like I mentioned a moment ago as well, because so much growth is found in that space, that area.
And what have you realized has been the biggest impact for you in bringing like breath work and mindfulness into your life?
I mean, the big one would be getting off the antidepressants. That was in my life for about a year. And by no means am I saying to the listeners here, do breath work and you'll never have to take antidepressants again. Everyone's different, again, everyone's different, listen to your doctor, all that jazz. But, that was a huge part for me in my life. And, kind of going back to your question as well, where I mentioned breath awareness and the 4-6 breathing, even just understanding how to breathe day to day, I think made a huge difference for me. And relaxing my mind, my body, and my nervous system, where, I was a dysfunctional breather for years. I had exercise-induced asthma for years. I've not had exercise-induced asthma. I've not had asthma. I've not had to use my inhaler since I got into all this nasal breathing, which is one of the most incredible changes in my life. So here's a vulnerable, embarrassing story for you. I used to breathe using my mouth and through my upper chest because I thought it made me look like I had a bigger chest muscles. So I thought I looked better looking. How embarrassing is that? What a complete loser. So then I realized I was like, no, I'd rather breathe optimally to give myself more oxygen into the body and to reduce that stress that I'm feeling in my nervous system, in my brain. So I realized that nasal breathing, light, slow, deep was the way to go. And obviously the more that you practice a skill, a certain breathing technique or rhythm and rate, through neuroplasticity, the brain will adapt. And the more that you consciously do it, the less that you'll have to consciously do it, and it becomes second nature and more subconscious. So, getting off the antidepressants was a huge one, and just learning how to breathe day to day was a pretty huge one as well. And I just feel like I'm happier with who I am now as a person. This is a bit more deep, I guess, but I'm happier with who I am as a person now compared to the person that I was living in London. I look at myself and I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of how far I've come as a human, as a boyfriend, as a son, as a friend, as a coach. I didn't like who that person was in London, and I almost hated myself. So I think that's a little pat in the back for Rory as well.
And what do you think? I'd love to dig deeper into that with you. And thank you for sharing, Rory. What is it that has changed for you in terms of now being really proud of yourself that is in correlation with that breath work? Is it just sort of like, do you feel like you've sort of been able to create the space to sort of become your more authentic self through this?
Yeah, it is that. It's finding happiness in who I am and being aware of the person I want to be. Previously in London, coming back to purpose and meaning and direction, I didn't have any of the above. I didn't know who I was. Then the breath really helped me find that. And, same, being a coach and be able to help people improve their health and happiness through breathing, something so simple, but yet so effective and so efficient. That's made me very happy, just having a bit more purpose and being able to see people's reactions when they do a breathwork session, or someone messaging me saying, I've been taping my mouth when I sleep for the last week and I feel incredible when I wake up. These little wins just make me smile. So even just finding the breath personally, but also being able to help people has changed my life in many ways.
Yeah, I love it in the context of when you speak about the nervous system as well, because that's something that I've certainly come to appreciate is when we are in that sympathetic state that is like full of high stress, you release the cortisol and adrenaline. What also happens is your prefrontal cortex essentially goes offline. And that's sort of, what I've sort of leaning into in the last couple of years is really understanding that it's quite difficult to be your authentic self when you're in that state of protection and you're no longer in a state of connection because you're sort of looking around for these potential threats. And I feel like most people are living their day-to-day life that, not thinking clearly, fundamentally because a large part of their brain that is sort of responsible for clear thinking and decision-making just is not online. And I think that's what I really come to appreciate about breath work. and being able to sort of tap into that space so quickly, like within a minute, really, about being able to pull your system into more of a responsive state than a reactive state.
Yeah, and I love everything you just said there, that, from responsive to reactive, that was perfect. Where, this is a lot of the work that I do in the corporate space too, with teams where, if you're in a high stressful state, and if you're not thinking correctly under pressure and under stress, you're going to make mistakes. And there's been multiple studies that have shown that IQ drops during times of stress. And some people making $1 million to $1 billion deals under stress, and they're not thinking clearly. You think, how is that going to work? That's not going to work as well as it could and as well as it should. So just understanding how to use the breath to move down that continuum from that, I guess, high stress, very stressed, panic state to more an alert and calm state. Alert and calm is that optimal state to be during the day. You don't want to be too tired, or otherwise you're too lethargic and you can't really think properly or correctly. But as you just mentioned there very clearly, when you're too stressed, too overwhelmed, too anxious, you're not going to make the correct decisions. And we see it all the time with people just not thinking clearly and reacting instead of either being proactive or actually thinking about the decisions.
And I'd love to move into the space of athletic performance, because this is an area that you work in, and I would say you yourself are a high performer. How do you enhance your performance, both for yourself and your clients, through breath work, strength and conditioning, and mobility?
Yes. So for me, it all starts with how I'm breathing day to day. It's that functional breathing, that nasal breathing, making sure that every breath that I take every day is going to improve the way that I perform and the way that I recover. So moving from that dysfunctional to functional, I improve my CO2 tolerance. Essentially, by improving CO2 tolerance, you'll breathe less breaths per minute. And, this is found out back in 1904. It's called the Bohr effect. Less breaths per minute will actually improve oxygen uptake and delivery. And for an athlete, whether it's myself or any of the clients I work with, the Sydney Swans, you want to perform to a high standard, a high ability for a long duration. And if you can't do that because you've been over breathing and that you're not going to absorb oxygen as much, you're going to fatigue too quickly and you're not going to perform at your best. And then the competition will beat you, or you'll get too tired and you'll wonk essentially. So CO2 tolerance is a huge one. Nasal breathing is a huge one as well. All the benefits that the nose provides, from warming the air, filtering, humidifying, bringing that clean oxygen into the lungs. Nasal nitric oxide as well. Nasal nitric oxide essentially helps to open up blood vessels, vasodilation, the opposite of vasoconstriction, where the narrowing of the blood vessels. By having more CO2 in the body as well, it will actually help with that vasodilation as well. But because many of us have adapted this habitual overbreathing pattern, you see it a lot with people running, right? This is what people are doing. You're getting rid of too much CO2. And if you're getting rid of too much CO2, you can't absorb that oxygen into the working cells and tissues. Again, found out back in 1904. So this is incredible stuff that people just need to be giving more attention to. For myself as well, it's understanding how to downregulate and move into that parasympathetic so that my body has that rest and digest state when I need to recover and when I need to sleep. The world is looking at, we live in a very tech-orientated world where people are looking at these, I don't even know what they're called, those Norma something boots. What are they called? Norma Tech, I think they're called.
I'm not sure.
These are recovery legging things that people wear.
Oh, yes, I've seen them.
But all the literature pretty much states that the best two things for recovery are sleep and active recovery. Just bringing it back to the basics. And I think this is, I don't mean to say I think, I know this is what I'm passionate about, where bring it back to basics, sleep well, drink enough water, breathe well, and your life is going to be a lot better.
So I'd love to know, because I know that last year you did the 100-kilometer UTA run, which is actually something that I did as well. Big difference. You did it in under 14 hours. And to my understanding, you had not ran sort of further or raced further than 21 kilometers before this. So this to me is incredibly interesting, Rory, and I want to go deep on this, probably for selfish reasons. I want to know the secrets. How do you, because I feel like in ultra running, the people that I come across that want to talk to me about it, they always feel like there's these really small steps that they need to take. But for someone like you, you really show that it is possible to do these things with not having a massive experience when it comes to endurance running. What would you sort of recommend for people wanting to do this longer style of running, without injury and in a way that is healthy for you? Because I think what I've noticed, Rory, in the space of ultramarathon running is not everyone is taking care of themselves, and it's not necessarily on purpose, but it's just a lack of the right information in understanding how they can go out and live their life like this, but also take care of themselves as well.
Yeah, it's planning, preparation, routine, structure, all the above, where, and I know you know this, but just reiterating, from having a strength and conditioning coach to build fundamental strength so that even if your mind wants to take you, your body can take you too. There's a serious issue if you're very mentally strong, but your physical body can't go there, then you're going to get injured, right? So having a strong strength and conditioning program, having a coach who can understand the volumes, the intensities, the durations, from their aerobic work to your anaerobic work to whatever it may be. Working closely with a coach, I work very closely with Greg, who helps program every week for me, which is incredible. My life is very busy, and just to have someone do that for me, and I look down on my Garmin, click run, and there's my session already built in, right? It's huge. Mobility has been a massive one as well. Just that end range strength to make sure my muscles, joints, ligaments, tendons are all strong as well. I did a course in LA back in 2020, functional range conditioning, which was really, really important for me. And I do a lot of that with my clients. And personally, I'll probably do some movement at least every single day. I'll do some breath work every single day. I'll do strength and conditioning 4 or 5 times a week, and I run 4 or 5 times a week. So it's a lot, but I take it very seriously. And if you want to improve, the main thing, if you want to improve, is just consistency. A lot of people want these quick wins, and I'm almost planning my ultra calendar or diary for the next 10 years. I'm looking at what races I want to run over the next 10 years, from Badwater to 135 to Kosciuszko to whatever it may be. And I'm very aware that my body can't take 3 or 4 at the moment. My body can't take 3 or 4 ultras in a year. So this year I've got 1 booked in, and I'll see what I can do over the next 3 or 4 years. So I'm just playing the long game. I'm being consistent with the training, and I know that the more consistent, and if I can stay disciplined and follow that structure, then it'll improve over time. But there's no, the body takes a while to adapt, and there's no quick win or quick pill that you can just take. And if someone wants to improve in anything in life, just be consistent, turn up, show up, and put the work in.
And do you have a pattern of breathing that you incorporate to enhance your performance in ultramarathon running?
Yes. So every run that I do, depending on what zone I'm running in, and this is probably getting quite technical to some listeners, but you'll understand what I'm talking about here, and I'll try and explain it in a clear way. Zone 2 is your steady state, easy, aerobic, conversational pace. So that will always be nasal in, nasal out. Relaxed, nothing too intense. If I were to then push it a little bit more, moving to the low anaerobic, so a little bit faster, that high aerobic, maybe 150 to 160 beats per minute. It'd be nasal in, nasal out, a little bit faster, more power breaths. If I'm doing intervals or hills or tempo work, then I'll be mouth in, mouth out. When I'm actually racing and competing, I try not to think about it. So I just let the body work. I think if you're trying to think about too much when you're racing, it can be a little bit overwhelming. I do try to focus on nasal breathing, but if I find myself mouth breathing and it happens, I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm going to try and look at the ground and not trip over a root before focusing on that, if that makes sense. So, when I run and when I'm training, I'm going to go for a run after this. It's about building my capacity, my cardiovascular system, building my skeletal system, building my muscular system, but also my breathing system and my nervous system. So I'm looking at all those systems there. We've got 11 systems in the body, and I'm including those two, the nervous system and the breathing system, because, it's a training run. So I still want to train every aspect that I can of my mind and my body. There you go. It shows how intense I am.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I mean, you are not only preaching, you're also practicing, and it's showing up in the results that you're getting. So I'm here for it.
Sorry, I'll jump in quickly. Something else just popped in my head. When you do your longer Saturday, Sunday runs, whatever they may be, the steady state, the less stress that you can put on the body, the better, right? So the lower your heart rate is, and nasal breathing is directly connected to that. So if you're using the nose to breathe, it'll help bring your heart rate down and just bring less stress in the body, so you can run further to a higher standard, if that makes sense.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then you recover faster.
And I'd love to know, I know that character building and character development is extremely important for you. And to my understanding, ultramarathon running, particularly say the UTA 100, is an event that certainly enhances this development. Can you share more about your experience of the UTA 100 and maybe, what you learned about yourself throughout that experience?
It's funny when you asked that question, I nearly got quite emotional. Actually, it's strange. So yeah, I mean, going back to what you mentioned a moment ago too, where prior to running that 100K, all I ran was a half marathon. And, I'd never really taken my running that seriously. I met up with Greg, just met through Instagram. He then said that he was running this 100K. And I remember saying, oh, wow, I'd love to run 100K. That sounds incredible. He goes, well, why don't you do it? I remember saying to him, all right, F it, I'll do it. And I think I booked it that day. Wow. So I trained very, very hard. I gave up a lot for that. I remember my Saturdays for a good few weeks before the race and before my taper, my Saturdays were driving out to the Blue Mountains on my own, sometimes in the pitch black, running a trail marathon on my own, getting lost sometimes, finding my way back, then coming home, sleeping and eating. The Sunday, I then wake up and do a road half marathon around Bondi, come home, sleep, look after my puppy, because we had a puppy at the time. Moved house 3 times, I think, in that time as well, which is a bit chaotic. And then, I remember we're running, and the actual race, I remember just thinking to myself and actually saying to myself, you've trained so hard and you've sacrificed so much for this one day, enjoy every step that you take in the scenery, look around you. You've made this for yourself. And I felt so focused. That was the best word to use, was focused. And, it's the closest. Actually, no, it's not the closest. I was 100% in a flow state, and I've never experienced that doing anything else. When you run for 14 hours, and I felt like a different person. I didn't feel like a human. I remember coming into checkpoint at about 70K in, and I just, I actually got a video on it, my phone. Someone in my team took a video, and I charged into the checkpoint, grabbed a banana, ate a banana, sat down. I remember I looked at my watch, being like, right, you got 10 minutes from now, from when you sit down, then you're going again. And I remember my girlfriend looked at me, she's like, how do you feel? I was like, I feel great. I'm ready to go.
Wow.
And that's 70K in, then, then the hurt locker hits in when you got that, the last 20K, as I'm sure you remember, where it's 10K downhill, 10K downhill, 10K uphill, pitch black, no one around you, had the headphones in, just listened to some deep, deep techno. And I remember just being like, right, let's go. I remember I was hallucinating. I was seeing stuff.
Wow. It was really cold that time as well.
It was, it's freezing, but the Scotsman in me, I think I was actually wearing this top.
Oh my God.
But I remember I didn't change once. I just kept the same kit on from start to finish. Didn't even put I had a jacket on, I think, when I finished. There you go. I can't even remember doing that or putting it on. But it was cold. But nothing can compare to that experience. And, anyone listening who is thinking, oh, I really want to do something like that, anyone can do it, and you know that too, right? Anyone can do it. You put your mind to something, you stay focused, be disciplined. Everyone else is going out partying on the weekends, everyone going to the pub, go to bed at 8, wake up at 5, do your training. It's temporary, you don't, unless you're you and I who want to do more, but it's often temporary, just for one sort of one huge achievement in life. And it's challenging, it's hard. You grow as a human, you build. And I think that is so much about what being human is, finding uncomfortable positions and uncomfortable situations and environments to make you more resilient, build your strength in mind and in body. And I'm hugely passionate about that. I think we live in a world that's very, very comfortable in so many ways. When you're cold, you put the heating on. When you're too hot, you put the AC on. Build some strength, build some resilience, get some grit. It's just too easy. That's why I love conscious stress to promote adaptation, from ice baths to running in the bloody pitch black in the rain to, I thrive in that. And I feel that's just often what being human is about.
I absolutely love it. I've actually started incorporating a morning ice bath, a little dip every morning at the moment. And
love it.
The benefits, as you know, biologically are amazing, but I think mentally also as well, as just starting your day doing a difficult thing and knowing that this difficult thing is good for you, it just transfers into how you live your life, the decisions that you make, the way that you think. It's truly powerful, and I've certainly experienced that as well, like you're saying in the ultramarathon running. Just doing difficult things because we live in such a comfortable world, I really feel like is the missing piece when it comes to also depression and anxiety, is having that sense of purpose and meaning, and being able to grow through these difficult times is so important. And Rory, you mentioned the Hurt Locker, and like that last 20 or so Ks of that run were probably my hardest and not so finest in my life. And I'd love to know, because, you mentioned focus. What is it that you focus on in those really difficult times?
As simple as one foot in front of the next.
It really is, isn't it?
It's not looking too far ahead, just thinking every step that I take. And I remember thinking this, every step that I take is one step closer to the end. Not that I wanted to wish my steps away, because I loved the journey that I took on over those 14 hours, but knowing that it was coming to an end, and just to keep pushing. All the work and the sacrifice, the effort that I put in 3-4 months prior to that was all for that moment. And, any pain or discomfort that I felt during that moment was completely temporary. As soon as I finish that cross that finish line, everything's back to normality. And it's, our pain threshold, I think, as humans, is far less than what we think it actually is. And this is why, ultra runners and people who do stupid stuff like you and I, get on very well, because we think in a different way, I believe, than a lot of other people. And we'll push our body, our mind to extreme lengths where other people haven't been there yet. And it's a completely new environment, and I love the name of this podcast too, where, that's what being human's about. We're experiencing life from all angles, all directions. When you get to 14 hours in of running, or 12 or 13 hours in, I've never done that before. And that was the first time I did that. And you think, wow, right. I can do this. Even in training, I think the longest I ran in training was about 45 or 50K. And then coach was like, right, you're off on 100K now, mate. Like, what?
I absolutely love it. And yeah, I totally agree. I feel like once you experience what we're talking about for the first time, it's something that you just is so important to pull into your daily life. And I feel like this transfers into daily life as well, which is so important, because I remember when I went into ultramarathon running, and everyone kept saying to me, the best piece of advice is putting one foot in front of the other. And I'm like, surely it's more complex than that. And I really, took it for granted until I sort of went out there and understood what that meant. But I feel like it's important in daily life as well. We set these, or we may be fearful to set these big goals because it all seems overwhelming and too much. And that's certainly something that I've taken into my own life, is just understanding, okay, how do I sort of lay out the map and just understand it's just the next right move, and then it's just the next right move. And I feel like that's been quite transformational in my own life.
Completely. And it's enjoying and trusting the process as opposed to focusing on the outcome. Every little step to get to where you want to go. And, even going back to running for 14 hours, everything in life just feels so much easier. And even, a 3 hour drive now, you think, oh, 3 hour drive, whatever. I ran 14 hours, in the dark. And, I'm doing this. My next big race is in Chile, 250K, which we discussed briefly. And, it's some of the stages are broken up. I think a 30, 40K, then there's an 80K in there somewhere, which is fantastic. Thanks for planning that one, guys. But the 30 and the 40Ks now, I fully comprehend 40K is a long run, but it just feels like I feel like I could do that now just because I know what I've done in the past. So it just makes everything much easier.
And I'm personally really excited for you to go to the Atacama run, because that's the multi-stage run. And through my experience, my first single stage race was last year with the UTA, and it's a different experience. And the multi-stage certainly pulls on a lot more human connection. And that's something that I love so much about the multi-stage. And certainly in terms of, we mentioned the character development, I feel like that will sort of add a nice little element to that for you, which I'm excited to support you with, and to hear back after this run how it was different and how you've been able to develop more as a person post-run.
Amazing. And that's exactly why I'm doing it. To experience a new environment and to grow as a human, and grow as a person, and to see where my mind and body takes me.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Rory, for this wonderful conversation. I appreciate it so much. And I'd love to end on a little bit of, I guess, insight into, for any of the listeners that aren't familiar with breathwork and want to start bringing that into their daily life. What is a really easy practice? Is it the 4-6 breathing? For how long? What is something that you would recommend they start trying to practice in their life? I would say starting today.
Starting today, one of the best practices that I always go to and provide to clients and patients is the 4-6 breathing. Super simple. 4 seconds into the nose, 6 seconds out through the nose. I nearly forgot it there. 4 in, 6 out. Reduces the breaths per minute to 6 breaths per minute. Huge amount of science and literature behind that one technique. Really easy to down-regulate, reduce stress, improve your quality of sleep, and many other things. So that's definitely my go-to.
And how long would you suggest that they do that for at a time?
So I'd say minimal effective dose would be about 3 minutes, up to about 10 minutes per day. I do it when I sleep, and I then drift off to sleep. So who knows how long I'm doing it for? Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 10, 15. I don't really know. Next minute I wake up and it's the morning. So it's clearly worked.
Amazing. So thank you, Rory, so much. And on a final note, I would love to ask you, what does it mean to you to be human?
To be human is to experience life, never to merely just exist, but to actually properly live. I'm so passionate about doing everything and anything in the world for the people around you, your friends, your family, to help, to add value, but also just do everything you can. As simple as this may sound, just do lots of stuff, just do everything. And I really believe that once I grow old and once I leave this earth, that's me gone. So I've got one shot to give it everything and leave a bit of, not a legacy, I think that sounds a bit much, but just to leave a bit of impact and footprint and just experience everything the world has to offer.